Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm 10 Tampa Bay Chief Meteorologist Bobby Deskins. This is our midweek weather update. And today we have...
And I'm 10 Tampa Bay Meteorologist Colleen Campbell.
And, we're going to be talking about it's not a lot of weather going on out there.
No.
So what are you going to talk about?
Nothing but the heat.
Nothing but the heat. But there actually is quite a bit to talk about the heat because, number one, we're pushing record highs over the next couple of days. In fact, probably through the weekend. Number two, we're in a drought.
Yeah, and those numbers are probably going to get worse.
It's going to get worse before it gets better. Yep.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the rainy season and what the ingredients are that we need to get the rain to start to fall around here. And it's going to take a little while, but there's some good news because, Colleen, I was just looking at the forecast you had from earlier today, and Monday shows a little chance for some rain out there.
Let it rain. Cry it out.
Saying there's a chance.
Saying there's a chance. Cry it out, baby.
Well, let's go live outside right now. I'll show you the blue skies that have been out there, and it's been real quiet weather-wise. It's been warm, but what's happening is it's actually been a little bit more humid too. But that's down here where we are, right?
Yeah.
If you look at this picture up in the air, it's actually fairly dry up above us.
Yeah, pretty stable, nice and clear. And along the beaches, you know, it's felt nice with that sea breeze we have setting up. But
we've been so lucky, lucky. The water's in the 70s.
Yeah.
But we just don't have enough moisture from the ground all the way up to give us those afternoon showers and thunderstorms. Because look, it's close to 90. And it's still a little bit on the humid side. It's not terrible, but you would think we would get afternoon showers and storms, but that's just not the case. And one of the reasons there is the dew point. Dew point's at 65 degrees. Now that is a little bit on the higher side.
Yeah.
So humidity's up there around 53%, but it's still, you know, what do we get, Colleen, in the summertime, 70, 72?
Oh yeah, yeah, we're really pushing it, and you can feel it. Air you can wear, we like to say, right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, we're waiting for rainy season, but it seems like we're taking forever to get there. And days like today and this week, it's really not helping us when we have this stretch of dry weather. And as Bobby was saying, that moisture is not reaching all the way up in the atmosphere. So fortunately, we can't kind of wring out the sponge, if you will. It's just, nice and dry. And a good indicator is that when you look up and you see the clouds, really not a lot of cloud cover. You get a little bit of cloud cover for inland locations. You kind of get those little puffy fair weather cumulus clouds. Get a little bit of rising air, but overall that dry air that we have mixing in the upper levels, it's just not helping us out.
It's just not enough. You'll notice those fair weather cumulus clouds, they get only so tall.
Yeah.
And then they fall apart. They just kind of bubble up. They bubble up, fall down, bubble up, and fall down. That's because they're running in the dry air loft. Now, Colleen mentioned that we're lucky with that water temperature, and boy, oh boy, are we. 76 degrees right now at Pier 60 in Clearwater. So
feels nice.
Think about, we could do a little bit about the sea breeze, Colleen. Think about the morning hours barefoot on the road. You can walk across it barefoot, no problem, it's not hot.
Yep.
But you wouldn't want to do that at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Because the sun has been shining down, heating the land up, and more importantly, heating that asphalt up, right? And so it's real hot. You don't want to do that. Now, when the land and those roads, when they heat up, the air starts to rise from that heat. When that happens, the other air needs to fill in, right? You can't have a vacuum there. So let's go back out to those temperatures, and what happens is you end up with basically this air here rising, right? You see those warm temperatures, but look, you've got 85 in Trinity, you've got almost 75 in the water off the coast.
Yeah.
So as this air goes up, you end up having this air coming in to fill it. That is the sea breeze, and it's also happening over here in Riverview. I mean, if you look at Riverview, right, they're right there on the water. But they have the same thing. They're at 89 degrees, but the water's 76.
Yeah.
So that air rises over them, wind comes in, they get that cooling sea breeze. And that's why you see what you see here on the map, which is 82 degrees in Tarpon Springs and 88 in Plant City, 90 in Lutz.
Yeah, and Bobby, a lot of people will always ask us, why is the temperature so different? It's along the coast. It's kind of like these little microclimates, as you were just explaining. It all depends on your location and how the air is rising in that certain area and, how the breeze is blowing in. So in one spot along the beach, you're close to the water, feels great, but go a little bit inland and it starts to feel, pretty uncomfortable. And again, we have these sea breezes that are changing throughout the afternoon. That's another thing to consider. You know, we may start off with air coming in from the southeast to begin the day, and then we have air kind of changing direction there throughout the afternoon. So it's all about the sea breeze and how it feels to you.
Yeah, and so what's happening now is we have a light east to southeast wind. It's blowing like this, but it's so light that the sea breeze, that process I just explained, that can happen here on the coast enough to fight it and push it in, and so you get a conjunction right here, usually along and just east of I-75. Now, if this southeast wind was really strong, it would just keep blowing. You wouldn't get a sea breeze.
Yeah.
But this is actually a pretty typical pattern for us here, especially this time of the year, but even throughout the summertime. And it just all depends on where that wind's coming from and how strong it is, if we're going to see the sea breeze or not. And it also has to do with the temperature of the water. So as that water comes up, and you've got 85 in the water, you've got 85 on land, you're not going to get much of a sea breeze. And that's what happens in the summertime, where you've got 90, 92 in the water, and you have 90, 92 in the air on land, and it's just humid and stagnant and not a lot of breeze. And by that point, you're just hoping that you get a sea breeze, a shower or thunderstorm to cool us off a little bit.
Okay.
All right, take a look at the picture, and you can see that we do have some warm numbers inland. But up and down the coast, and we try to show you that with the color coding here. You can see like the lighter reds, or if you will, the oranges and yellows, that type of stuff. That's indicating that cooler air that's right along the coast. And so you can see that the sea breeze is occurring all up and down the East Coast. Now, let's talk about the record heat. Here are the numbers. So, yeah. So Colin,
basically every day we have
today,
a shot.
right?
Yeah, every day. I mean, today we forecast 90, but the record, what's that, 1964, 91 degrees. And listen, we hit records recently. You know, last Thursday, Friday. I mean, it's been consecutive days where we've been making these records. Really, the record temperature for all this week, 90 degrees. It's just different dates, right? So those are the records that you see that we can beat this week. And Friday especially, forecast 92, the record 93. Yeah, so I don't know. What do you think, Bobby?
Well, you know, the water will still be cooler, right? And so in these cases, those numbers, that forecast number, and Colleen just brought it up, like it's so different in different locations for current temperatures, right?
Yeah.
But that forecast number officially is for Tampa,
Yes.
which is actually the south end of the west runway. So that's right there where all the construction is, where you come around this corner and you either go off to the north and the west to cross over the Clearwater, State Road 60, or you go north to get up on the Veterans. That southern end right there where you enter the airport is about where that temperature sensor is. And so what will happen is it'll heat up to a certain time there, 12, 1, maybe 2 o'clock, then that sea breeze comes in. And it's that sea breeze that will cool it back down. So when we talk about record high temperatures, we're talking about that particular spot at the airport. That's where the records are kept. And most likely you see a forecast of 91 on Thursday, right? It's not going to stay 91, at least not in this particular regime because the water's cool. But does it briefly get up to 91 before the sea breeze comes in? That's what we're forecasting. That's what we think will happen. Now, all of this is happening and we haven't seen rain. All right, and so the drought is getting worse. You can look down there towards south of Lake Okeechobee in South Florida. Yeah, that's
extreme level of drought.
Yeah, it is, and only one level higher than that.
Yeah.
But the Panhandle's not terrible. It's mainly the peninsula, and if you look closer to our neck of the woods, you can see that the I-4 corridor actually looks better than anybody else. But especially Pasco, Hernando, Citrus County, Sumter County, that's where it's really getting dry. This gets updated every Thursday. It was updated last Thursday, and the map actually looks very similar to what it was last Thursday, but the numbers, the percentage of area that has the drought in every one of those categories has gone up just a little bit. I think tomorrow morning when this is updated, we'll see actually a pretty decent change in what that will look like. So that's just saying it's getting drier. You know, and Colleen, somebody asked me the other day, what is that? What is the ingredients?
Oh yeah.
How is that kind of added up? And it ends up being a little bit more of soil moisture than anything else. They take a look at the temperatures, the high temperatures. They take a look at the rainfall for the year over that particular area. And then they basically come up with how dry it is, what it should be for that time of the year, right?
Yeah.
And then it's a cumulative thing. So that's Thursday. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they keep doing it every day because the next day you add, we were 90. Now, if we were 80 the next day, then that would bring that number down a little bit. So the drought might not be as bad. But as we stay near 90 degrees, and they keep doing that calculation and they keep adding up as it goes, things will not only get worse, but they'll get worse quicker.
Yeah.
Because it's a cumulative thing. So it's a little tricky there, but that's what it basically boils down to. Now, wildfire season, drought season. This is typical for this time of the year.
Kind of play hand in hand there. All the dry fuel, and Florida's a very interesting place because, you know, when you think of dry fuels in different parts of the world or different parts of the country, you know, you think of dry, crunchy leaves, right? That's probably the first thing that pops to your mind. But here in Florida, we have different things that can ignite. You know, we have kind of those waxy plants and you know, the palm trees, you can see them getting crispy. So that's kind of our crispy leaves, right? We have those crispy palms. You see them start to brown and really dry out. I mean, talk to any farmer about drought conditions, and I'm sure that they will go on a whole rant. And some plants are very sensitive, you know, very sensitive vegetation. So yeah, what Bobby's showing you right now are the active wildfires that we have across our area, and not something that we like to see. And Bobby, I'm sure you want to talk about how these fires can start and spread so easily when we have these dry conditions.
Yeah, so you think about it, we have the rainy season, then we have the dry season. So you get a lot of water, you get a lot of stuff to grow, you get a lot of grass, you get a lot of trees. Then you have hurricane season come through, and it knocked down a bunch of trees. So then you get back into your normal dry season like we are now, and now this time of the year, and here's why April, May are the worst months, because the temperature average high is going up. Right? Yeah. We're coming into summer, we're getting warmer and warmer, but we don't have the rainy season until late May. Most likely it's usually around the first week of June or so, right? So basically, this is the time of year where we get hot. Now, all that rain we had last summer and in the early part of the fall, it made all that grass. Well, that grass is dead now, or at least it's drying up.
Yeah.
And you really see it, you know, on the highways, Colleen. That's where you see it the most, because some people can water their lawns, that type of thing.
Right.
But you notice out in the middle of the highways, that's kind of like my barometer, if you will, of how the grass is looking. And then when I see that really browning up, that's when I start getting worried about wildfires. So back out to the wildfire map, basically, if you look down here, we have a fire here. You see this green down here in Myakka State Park?
Yeah.
That is
radar
smoke. Yeah, that is the radar picking up on the smoke. And in fact, if I put it into motion, you can tell it is, because see, it's kind of emanating from the same spot.
Yeah.
Right? And
very dark there, you know, the dark colors picking up the higher concentration.
And it looks like rain,
yeah,
but it's not. It's basically starting right here. And also, because of that, you can tell that the winds are blowing in this direction, right?
Yeah.
Because it's blowing the smoke.
Yeah.
And that's that east to southeast wind we were talking about. Now later, they will actually try and get a little bit of a sea breeze there that'll flip it back around. But control burns are something that the state does, that private people will do as well. Lots of agricultural control burns. Think about the tortoises. You know, the turtles that we have. They're turtles. They're not fast, and they can't climb up over things. They rely on fires. Because when you get a lot of rain, you get a lot of shrub, a lot of stuff growing. It's hard for them to get from A to B to find a mate, find, you know, whatever. So then when fires come through, and we're talking thousands of years, this has been, you know, evolution for them. When fires come through, it tends to clean up that forest floor and allows them a lot easier passage to get around and find other turtles.
They can get moving, get mating.
You said it, but that's exactly what I was talking about. Exactly right. So it is a natural process that happens here, but the problem is it can really get out of hand. We have these what are called fire weather watches and red flag warnings.
Yeah.
So basically a red flag warning is the main one, and that's when you have very dry conditions like we have. We know we have that. You also have low humidity in the forecast. So they would say today's a red flag. It's not a red flag warning today.
No.
But they would say that as if this was the particular case. And winds of about 15 miles per hour or higher sustained.
Yeah.
Because then you have dry fuels, you have real low humidity that if any fire gets started, it's not going to have a trouble going. And then you have the wind, and the wind can make it spread. Right? So that would be a red flag warning. I know we use red flags for small craft advisory. It's a little tricky, I get it, but red flag pertains to fire. Now, the fire weather watch, that would basically be like, for instance, they would have this area here for a fire weather watch for tomorrow. And then when tomorrow gets here, it becomes then a red flag warning.
Right.
Okay, so it's kind of like the watch versus the warning here. They should call it a red flag watch versus a red flag warning. That's not my job. We'll leave that alone. But that's what we see. So when you see a red flag warning, that means, look, today's the day we've got some wind, we've got real dry conditions, we could start some fires. If you see a watch, that means tomorrow. And we know right now, because of the situation we're in, that we just need to be careful through May.
Yeah. And Bobby, a lot of people don't realize, they're saying, okay, well, I'm not outside burning and, making a bonfire. It's hot, it's Florida. But what people don't realize is how easy they can start a fire. A good thing to remember, there's chains that are on the back of the trucks. You see these trucks driving down the road. That can actually spark a fire. And you're just talking about in the median there, you have all that dry vegetation, and that's kind of, a good indicator. I mean, all it takes is one spark. And when we're under that red flag warning, that means those conditions are breezy, they're just right. We have plenty of fuel to work with. And, we have relative humidity, or how much moisture in the air, below 35%. Now, listen, just because the winds, we might have 2 out of those 3 elements. Like right now, we still have the dry fuel. We just don't have the breezy winds for today. So there's no red flag warning for today, but our winds are lighter for today. So if our winds were breezier, they could absolutely issue a red flag warning. So, even if there's not a red flag warning this time of year, you really just have to be careful because, a fire can start and spread very easily, and you may not even realize that you have a spark go. Another typical thing, throwing a cigarette out the window. Well, how many people actually do that?
I can't tell you how many. I mean, you think of Pinellas County, it's very developed, right?
Yeah,
there's not a lot of area there, but so many of the wildfires get started along 275.
Yep.
People throwing a cigarette butt out,
yep.
something causing a spark, the chain, as we were saying, the chain that you put between your trailer and your truck,
yes.
Those types of things. We do have what are called burn bans. Mm-hmm. Now, Pinellas and Hillsborough and Duval County, up in Jacksonville, by the way, year-round burn bans. You're not allowed to burn trash and things like that in your backyard or anywhere, right? But notice what we've got now. We've got all the way through the Orlando area, all the way down through Marco Island, basically, except for DeSoto County. Not yet. Mm-hmm. They'll get there, though. But what happens is, obviously, again, the immediate Bay Area never can do that, but Manatee got added to the list yesterday. Sarasota's been in it for a while now. Polk County, Hardy, DeSoto, Highlands, not DeSoto, excuse me, but Highlands, and then even down into Charlotte. You're getting down all the way down to Marco Island. But look at the Lake County. You're getting up into Volusia in the Orlando area. Essentially, what this means is very dry conditions out there. You need to be very careful. And look at the forecast.
Yeah.
I mean, we should be about 84, 85 through this period.
Yeah.
And we don't even have that on. This is model driven, but Saturday, a week from this Saturday, about a week and a half from now, we're still above average.
Yeah. Yeah, these temperatures are just, soaring, and there's nothing to cool us down. Like you said, we have a little bit of rain on Monday. That will drop our dew points a bit. But,
there we go. I mean, look, that's saying something right there.
Yeah.
And this is the European forecast model, and then that 20% is our forecast. And I had 10% yesterday. It didn't show as much of this at all. Mm-hmm. So we bumped it up to 20%. And I will say that is not 20% coverage.
Right.
But there's a saying that drought begets drought. Mm-hmm. Meaning when you get so dry, rain comes, it tries to fall, a lot of it evaporates.
Yes.
You don't have as much moisture rising because you just don't have as much moisture in the atmosphere. When that moisture gets into the area to start rising and making showers and storms, a lot of it gets eaten up. So I kind of hedge my bets a little bit. I would hope that we get that much rain coverage on Monday afternoon. It looks like Monday afternoon and Monday evening. That's still the case, I think.
Yeah, the models really bump that up, which, if we got that much rain, that would be great. But, I'm hopeful that we get that much rain. But, I mean, this time of year, it's just hard to come down. We just don't get those fronts like we normally see in the beginning of the spring season that really just gives us those nice, significant downpours. Now, closer to rainy season, we will start, seeing the faucet turn on a little bit more. But
fronts, I think we're done with fronts. There's some indication. You saw that cool down, not this weekend, but next. There's some indication that at least some dry air tries to filter its way into our area, drier, slightly cooler. Yeah. But I don't think it's actually a cold front. Cold fronts probably won't be back until late October or November. That's just how it works here. Take a look at the forecast rainfall map. So this is European model. Look at the big bullseye over Florida of no rain.
Yep.
And look where it is. And that's usually what happens. When we're real dry, the folks to our north and the west usually are pretty wet. And that whole corridor from northeast Texas up through Ohio, going to be a very, very wet stretch. Already has been. Now I stopped this at Monday morning at 7 a.m. Now if I go through Monday afternoon, you see finally Florida starts to see a little bit of rain. But again, you get the idea. It's mostly back up to our north and the west. Now, this is a little bit tricky. So we're going to talk about precipitable water, which is, just as hard to say as it is to spell. But and this is nothing official. I use here for Tampa, I've used over the years 1.75 inches.
Yeah.
To basically say if we have that much moisture in the atmosphere on a steady basis, then we can get those afternoon showers and thunderstorms when it gets 90 degrees outside, right? That's summertime.
Yeah.
What is PW? What is precipitable water?
Yeah.
It's the amount of moisture in a column of air if you went from the ground all the way up and you squeezed it out into a cup.
Yeah.
How much would you get? Right now, we're less than an inch.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying today, Bobby, we have all that dry air aloft.
Yeah.
So even though it may feel a little stickier outside, those dew points are a little bit higher here at the ground, that's not going all the way up in the atmosphere. If you have drier air aloft, you're not really getting rain squeezed out there.
Look at those puffy clouds, not the high wispy ones.
Yeah.
That's moisture way up there. That's a little bit of moisture. But look at the ones that are boiling up in the daytime heating, the lower level ones. Notice how they're not that tall. Summertime they get these big 40, 50,000 foot cloud tops and thunderstorms developing.
Yeah.
There's moisture up there. We just don't have that. This is a measure of that amount of moisture from the forecast model. And so it's saying, look at Monday, 1.5 inches. So that's not quite rainy season, but that's certainly enough to give us some afternoon showers and storms with this moisture that's moving through. So this is more of moisture kind of coming through the area versus when we get into summertime, that number is much higher.
Yeah.
And it's basically just, people say, how do you know where the thunderstorms are going to say? Because it's kind of like putting a pot of water on the stove, and then before the bubbles start forming at the bottom, our job is to tell you where those bubbles are going to pop up. Because that's the Florida atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's just bubbling up. The sea breeze process that we explained at the top of this, that's our cheat code.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we were talking about the Gulf and how warm it is earlier. Well, that's our heat source. When we get into the summer months, we have all that warm, moist air that's over the Gulf. I call it bath water because if you go in during the summertime, it feels like a hot tub out there. Now, Texas, we were just looking at Texas and they have all the moisture out that way. Well, yeah, this is their severe weather season. So we have our rainy season. They have their severe weather season first. And again, it's all because Texas is a little bit different, but they have that cooler air that's coming in off of Colorado, and then they have some of that moisture that's coming in from the Gulf. But us, that moisture starts to shift our way. We have different sea breezes set up, and when you're working with that really warm water, as we know with hurricane season too, it gives us more moisture to work with. And
so what do we look for in the future? Well, this is the forecast from May 1st through May 7th. And it does show a slight increase in moisture. Now, what this is telling you is this above or below normal or at normal, right? And what it's saying for Florida is that basically I think we can zoom in here a little bit, maybe not, that it's basically slightly above normal, which is not, it's not a lot. We're not supposed to get enough. This is still our dry season, right?
Yeah.
But it's an indication to us that we could see a little bit more rain, and we do think even by Monday that we'll see a little bit more. Now, at the same time that we're doing this, we stay warm. Now this was just updated today, and it's actually a little bit better for the East Coast, especially for Florida. It looks like it would be closer to average, but by that time, we're talking May, we're talking 85, 86 degrees for an average daytime high anyways.
Yeah.
So things are really warming up. The next month and a half, because sometimes we get into basically second week of June before we even start seeing rainy season. And what's going to happen is we're going to get a couple week period leading up to that at least where we do get a few thunderstorms. And what do thunderstorms have? Lightning. And what does lightning do? Cause wildfire sometimes when it strikes, because it's not a lot of rain, but it's a lot of heat, right? So here are some things to do. Colin, you kind of touched on this earlier. Dispose of cigarette butts, right? Keep them, please, in the car, in the ashtray. Avoid open burning, not really allowed to do it in most areas anyways. And watch those chains and things that could be dangling back behind there. Now, think about your house. Let's go over this graphic, guys. Remove any what we call ladder fuels, such as vines and shrubs. This is more out west where they have wildfire danger, even more so than us. But we have it here. So you really don't want a lot of shrubs and stuff right up against your house. You want an area about 10 feet at least that doesn't have a lot of vegetation in it.
Yeah.
So that if fire's going to get there, it's going to burn that, and it's not going to burn any closer. Anything like, and this is sad for me to say because this is for, there's old paint sitting out back at my house in the big Home Depot bucket that's been sitting there for a long time.
Uh-oh.
That's still flammable at times. That kind of stuff, you got to get it away from your house, which I'm going to do tomorrow now that I did this. And avoid types of mulch that are, mulch is flammable. You know, stones are great. I have mulch in my house. I get it, but you know, you just got to keep those things 5 to 10 feet from your house. You got to be keeping an idea on them or what to expect. So we talk about our hurricane preps. Have a good spot for all your insurance, your birth certificates, your social security numbers, all that stuff. This is the same thing. You know, tornadoes coming, grab and go.
Yeah.
If you're going to your safe spot, you're usually kind of staying in your house. But if you got a house fire, you know, you grab that, you get out and you go. You got all your important stuff. You have a wildfire coming towards your house, you grab that, you get out and go. It's a great tip to know for any time of the year.
Yeah, because that's what we're trying to break down here. Once a fire starts going, it's it's going to be hard to stop it with conditions like this. So.
Yep. So we don't have any. We don't have a lot of wind in the forecast over the next several days. So this fire weather watch, red flag warnings may not see that, but we know we're going to be dry. We know we're going to continue to see, I don't want to say low humidities, but relatively low humidities. So let's just be careful and just know that it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. And of course, we will update you right here anytime there are any issues. We'll keep an eye on that fire that's burning down there in the Mayaca State Park. I think it's a prescribed burn. But otherwise, we will keep you covered here. And hopefully we'll get into the rainy season. I do like some afternoon thunderstorms.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us for our Wednesday midweek weather wrap-up. We'll see you next week.